In this video, we'll be going over how to create some interesting shapes by creating some simple geometries, like a triangle that's arrayed around a circle. And at the end, we have this final shape that we rotate around. And so this is a fairly basic tutorial, but it'll be the first part of some future videos for form finding and 3D printing. I want to share how I go about creating some cool shapes for 3D printing. So I'll start here with a point, and I'll go here to construct point. Then I like to add a point component. That way I can add or set one point and move whatever I create. So this is what I'll use for creating my geometry. And I'll start here with a circle. We'll plug in the point into the plane. And for the radius, let's just say 15. So now that we have the radius, I'd like to subdivide the circle. So let's go here to point along curve, or point on curve. There it was. We'll plug in this into the circle, and so it'll create that point at the center. It doesn't really matter where you create it. All we need is a point so we can create a polygon. So let's double click here and go to Polygon. And I'll plug in that point into the plane. And I want to go create some polygons. So I like to go from 3 less than 10. That way it starts at 3 and set 10. So we can plug this into the, not the radius, plug this into the segments. And let's plug in a size for the radius. I'll say 15. And what we're going to do is take this polygon and we're going to array it or rotate it around the center point. There are different ways to achieve this. One is, say, array curve. So we can take this circle, plug it into the geometry, or into the curve, sorry. And then we'll plug in our polygon into the geometry. And we can basically rotate that around to create that pattern, and then we can say count 15. Right, so we can have our segments let's go here to 3. And the size, we can change that. Here's the other cool thing we can do is fillet radius. So for here, for this one, let's just bring in a 5. And of course, that's a little bit too much, so I like to change that to range. So we have like 3 decimal points to play with. So now that we have this, I'd like to share actually another way I like to do this, and it's more of like a manual way of doing it. And it's by using series. So I can achieve the same thing by rotating it a series of times. So I'll go here to a series component. Step is going to be the angle. So that will be determined by how many times we divide a circle. So bring in a panel here, and I'll do 360 degrees in a circle. We'll divide the circle by a certain number, so let's say 15. when we divide 360 by 15, that'll give us the angle that we're going to rotate, so that that'll go into the step. And into the count is by how much you divide it. So 15 goes into the count. Now I can rotate this object, right? So basically, this component does the same thing as this. And all we'll do is plug in our polygon into geometry. Let's make sure that the angle is degrees. And we can plug in our series into the degrees here. So let's disable the preview on this one. And we can increase the number of copies, right? It'll do 360 divided by 35, and that'll be how much it'll step each time. It'll do that 35 times, and that'll be the series of angles it'll create. So it'll create angles from 0 to 349, and it steps by 10.2. So that's the other way to do it. And the cool thing is we can do a start point, have a start point be different, but it doesn't really matter since we're arraying it all the way around. So now I'll delete this. And let's simplify this and just focus on this one. Let's move forward and go ahead and create this into a solid surface. And let's extrude it up or create some cool forms. So to do that, let's take these and let's put them all together. So I'll double click here and go to region, union. And here I'll plug in geometry all into this one. And as you can see, as soon as I do that, all the overlapping geometries here kind of go away. So there we go. Let's do this. Let's disable the preview on this one and disable the preview on that original one. Now we still have this polygon preview. So I'll disable the preview on that. And as you can see, what this does is just create this interesting shape that we can actually move the location of where it starts. And so that'll kind of create some variation because of the way the polygon's created. So when it's created exactly at the start point, it'll create it pointing to the right. And if we bring this back, you'll see that it'll maintain the same directionality, and it'll kind of change the form. So that's another cool way of changing the form kind of quickly. And then here under count, we can just increase the count on the size of the radius. We can always, let's go here. We can always decrease this a little bit. But let's go back to our original point. And for the next one, let's create a series of copies of this going up. So I'll take this and go to move. And I'll take this and move it vertically. In the motion here, I'll plug in Z. So it copies it vertically, but like I did in the rotate, I'll do a series of vertical movements. So I'll use Z vector, plug that into the step, and the series into the motion. Oh, quite the opposite actually. Let's do that again. So Z, here. So we'll have to graph this one so it does it to both of those, not just to one. It was just doing it to the inside one. So now let's go here to step and change that to increase the number of step in between. So let's go to like a 5. Right, so let's increase. And now let's try to loft together all of these. So I'll go here to craft here. It's not really working. So what we'll have to do is just select one and move these up just one at a time. So I'll go to list item. Flatten the list. Then I'll take off the graph here. And it'll say one of the curves. So it'll be the outside one. And that's what we use to copy vertical. So as you can see, all we did was extract one of these curves, which was the outside one. I could have easily picked the inside one, but the inside one is kind of not relevant. It's just this inside shape, and we can always use a circle for that. So as you can see, let's change our increment here on the step. As you can see, what we've done is just created one form at the bottom using a triangle, and the triangle has this fillet that we can always change. We can change also the polygon shape, so some of these things we can change, but for the most part, I think what really gives us kind of like a pointier shape is more of a triangular shape, and the more sides you have, it just becomes a shallower triangle. So for some applications, I could see that being cool, but for this time, we'll keep it on 3 and then increase the size because it's kind of clipping this right here. So let's go there. And I'll disable the preview on this one. Okay, now we can loft this together. Now that we have, and we won't graft it. We have to we'll just plug these in. But it's kind of boring just having this go straight up like this. I mean, I can see this being useful for like a column or something. Let's give it some color so we can see it. So I'll go to custom preview. And I'll bring in a color swatch just to see what it looks like. I mean, it's kind of cool, but if we rotate it, I think we'll get a better effect. So let's take these curves and do the same thing. So we'll do rotate, and we'll take these, plug them into the geometry, and we're going to rotate it around the center point. So the plane will use this point. Angle is going to be degrees. Now we are going to bring in the series component. So we can say how much angle it steps in between. I will say 10 degrees. So I'll do a slider of 10 here on the step. Count is going to be the same number of copies. So if here we have 10, we hover over here, we have 10. Let's go here to 15 on the count here. So we have more vertical. Well, this same number of 15 will go into the count here. And now we can do series into the angle and replace all of these curves back here with these curves. So we can, this could even be useful for if you're creating gears or something like that. I can see that. So if we step less, it angles less in between. So let's change number slider, do right. So all of this, and it stems from this. So let's decrease the number here, the size of it. And let's change our step angle here a little bit less. So this is cool if you're doing a lot of 3D printing. And we can also change the shape of this, right? We can scale these curves up and down, and that'll give us some variety on the shape. We can come here, and instead of doing so, let's see how many count, instead of doing 40, we'll do 20, and we'll increase the size of the radius like drastically. That's another way of getting some cool shapes that have like really deep grooves. And if you do a lot of 3D printing, these are some cool things that could be useful, right? Like just moving a slider like this can result in just a bunch of different shapes. And some of these might be useful, but some of these might not even be that good for 3D printing. Like you don't want too much of an overhang if you're 3D printing something like this. These are fairly simple steps. There are way more things that we can do parametrically, but one of the things I like to do is just take, let's say this loft, middle click, and then just bake it, and then just move it here inside of Rhino. I'll go here to shaded, and I'll take this and I'll do cage, edit, bounding box, and just do the defaults. And just play around with the center points, these points. So just scale them up like this. And yes, some of the geometries are really complex, so the computer will take a little bit longer to do some of those commands as compared to, you know, basic geometry. So this will, yeah, this will be heavy on the computer. And I have not yet gotten a chance to learn how to do cage edit inside of Grasshopper. For some reason, I've tried it before, but I just haven't really researched it, I guess, enough to know that. Okay, so now that we have this, there's two ways that I can make it into a solid. So I'll make a copy here on the right. Holding Alt, I'll just move this to the right. Select this, and I'll type in cap. Then I'll type in shell. Thickness, I'll just say 1 is okay. Select the top. And that way it'll remove all of the other, it'll give it a thickness and remove the top. So here's the thing, when you have complex geometries like this one, I can see it being really hard for this to create a solid. So at the end, there's a chance that if we look here, it'll say could not create one. And in that case, then we can figure out a way to hollow it out. So yeah, it was not able to do that. So let's see if we can undo the cap. Let's see if we can offset surface. So offset surface. And here's the thing, for that one, it'll be really difficult because no matter which way you offset it, it's going to have a hard time doing that. So let's go here to distance. I'll say 1. Actually, I'll say 0.5. Solid, yes. Sharp, yes. Let's see if it gives us a solid. And here's the thing, sometimes the easiest way is to make it into a solid, cap it, and then create your own geometry on the inside that is independent of the shape, and just subtract it. Make sure that it intersects it perfectly and subtracts it. Oh, sweet. So I did create it. Let's take a look at it. It does have, like I said, it does have a hard time doing that, especially here on some of the corners, but for this one, it was able to turn it into a solid. So if I go here to shaded mode, let's go here into our layer 1, go to clipping plane, vertical. Let's do a line here that intersects it. So this will be our clipping plane, and let's take a look on the inside. So yeah, some of these will not be the best for 3D printing because it overhangs a lot, but it creates some cool forms. So that was just an exercise that I wanted to share with you guys of form finding and using a shape, very simple shape, arrayed around like a central point or a circle, and this being one of the ways that we can create our geometry and play around with it. If you have any questions, make sure to let me know. I will have future videos that have similar content, so make sure to subscribe for that. And if you want the script for this video, make sure to check out the website for that. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. If you haven't already, make sure to check out the website where I have all of my video lessons, scripts, and YouTube videos, and way to contact me directly on here, organized for you just in case you want to come back and check out the scripts or download them. All the information will be here.